What's up everybody, I'm Matt.
And I'm Beth.
And today we're going to be reviewing the interior in the 2021 Ford Bronco Sport. So the Bronco Sport is an entirely new model here. It's very fun with its styling and a lot of the little Easter eggs and stuff in this vehicle. It's kind of unique in this segment. There are a couple of competitors like the Jeep Renegade and stuff, but this is a very fresh and new thing, and I really like this a lot, especially just the outside styling and stuff. It looks very fun and adventure ready. So this is much different than the actual Bronco. So if you're not someone that's been following along with the whole Bronco and Bronco Sport thing, this is based on a very similar platform to the new Ford Escape, although this is actually a shorter wheelbase and is a smaller vehicle than the Escape. That is the platform that is on it. It is not a full-blown off-roader like the actual Bronco is going to be, and the actual Bronco is much larger as well. So from a space standpoint on the inside here, this is also going to be smaller than the regular Bronco. And the size of the Bronco Sport is one thing that kind of took me by surprise, honestly. This is actually my first time sitting in one and stuff whenever I had this vehicle to review, and I honestly thought it was going to be a little bit bigger both on the outside and the inside here. And that is one thing that kind of surprised me here about the Bronco Sport, is that it's actually smaller than I was expecting it to be. I mean, it's classified as a subcompact crossover, so that is pretty appropriate. Ford likes to claim this has more interior space than the Escape, and that is true from a cargo standpoint, and just because you have the high ceilings here in the boxy shape, that allows it to measure larger than the Escape, but passenger room on the inside here is actually less than the Escape. And so that's just something that kind of took me by surprise based on that marketing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's cozy in here, but I think it should work as long as you're not too tall and you don't have large people sitting in the back seat. You need tons of legroom or anything. We'll get to the back seat here in a minute, but I really like the interior design here on just the way they did this one. Has this navy pier blue leather with this like denim looking cloth inserts and stuff. I think it's really a cool look.
Yeah, I love the blue, and I think that it really pops and it really goes with the whole theme of the Outer Banks. I wish there were some nicer materials on the dashboard and stuff, but it does have a little bit of a give, but I just wish it could have been a little bit nicer, but for the price I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and that is a good point. So this one, as tested, is about $36,000. It is the Outer Banks trim, which is the most luxurious one. You can go one higher trim up for the Badlands. That gives you a bigger engine and also more off-road capable suspension, more rugged four-wheel drive system and things like that. But otherwise, this is the nicest interior you can get in a Bronco Sport. And yeah, I agree, the materials, they're not the worst, but they're not fantastic either. This trim is the same exact material that was in that base model F-150 that we had just a couple of weeks ago. And so, for the top luxurious trim, I wish that there would have been, something a little bit nicer on the doors, but I do really appreciate that there's color to the leather. That is so refreshing, because so many other interiors, everyone just has black, and if you're lucky, maybe a beige, but to have the dark blue, the other option is you can get a rich dark brown leather interior too, which also I think is a really cool touch. And so it's just nice that they're offering color on these interiors, and especially depending on how you pair it up with the outside, it can really pop. This one has the cactus gray paint, which looks really nice. There's even an Area 51 bluish gray this would look really great with, and a few other colors. I also love the Bronco embroidery here on the back of the seat and stuff, and they're really soft, comfortable seats too. Obviously they're not too sporty as far as bolstering and stuff goes, but you're not expecting that in a crossover like this. And I think they really hug you in pretty nice. There are also heated seats here in this trim, and you can also get heated seats in the lower Big Bend edition with the cloth seats too if you like. But I really like these leather seats.
Yeah, I like them too, and for the passenger it is very nice because all of the controls are automatic, which is really nice. You can go up and down, back and forth, all of that stuff. But the only thing I'm kind of upset about is that even though I am sitting at the lowest setting, once again, it still just seems like I'm sitting a little bit high. It's not like I want to sit super low, it's just I feel like I'm sitting a little bit too high for my comfort zone, so I don't know.
Well, and we talked earlier in the week too about how at least the dashboard here in the Bronco Sport kind of comes up a little bit higher than an Escape. In the Escape, you really felt like you were sitting up too high.
Right.
And so this, it feels a little more appropriate since this has a little bit more of a trucky vibe to it. But it is really nice that they at least offer you the option to raise and lower your seat, because that is something that isn't really a given, and it's actually pretty rare, especially in this segment of vehicle, to even have that as an option. So kudos to Ford for giving that, you know, functionality. I think that's great.
Right. And so I just think that normally in a car, I don't like my knees feeling like they're at the same height as the dashboard, and they are not in this car, so that's why I feel like a little bit more comfortable than some of the other cars. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, so but yeah, great seats. The steering wheel here in the Bronco Sport is really nice as well. Now, I do like how you have the Bronco badging here on the airbag cover. That's cool. Otherwise, though, it's the same kind of wheel you get in a Ford Escape or something like that, but that's okay. It has a really nice 9-3 grip, nice 10 and 2 notches here, and just a few buttons here on it. This one has a few more because it has the more advanced adaptive cruise control system, but it's a great wheel. Now, one thing to note here is it is leather wrapped here in this, and if you go for a Big Bend version, you actually have to put on an extra package in order to have a leather wrapped wheel. So Big Bend in the base trim, it's going to be a plasticky feeling steering wheel, so you're going to want to make sure you at least get a Big Bend with the Big Bend package, they call it, or go for this Outer Banks in order to get that leather wrapped wheel. It's also a heated steering wheel here in the Outer Banks version. That is something you only get in the Outer Banks or the Badlands. You do not get that in any of the lower trims. And the heated steering wheel worked really great. It got nice and hot really quickly all across the entire wheel, and it was, yeah, really well done for that. The gauges here in the Bronco Sport are pretty good. So I really love how you have, you know, unique dials, unique fonts, and it's a little more trucky again, especially there on that center of the, you know, gauge cluster there, that little screen, how you have, you know, these very blocky fonts, and it's really a cool look, and it's actually unique and looks different than what you get in some other Fords, although you still have some of the basic same mechanicals as far as, you know, trip information, you know, all those types of things you can scroll through. You know, that's all pretty standard Ford stuff, but you know, it's pretty simple but works well. This one also, since it has that adaptive cruise system, will show you the speed limit signs and all that in there. And so, I mean, these gauges aren't going to wow you too much. You know, there are some animations whenever you go through the GOAT modes, which is the different drive modes. Those are kind of, you know, cool looking. But other than that, you know, just your basic gauges here. And that is one thing, you know, if you go for a Ford Escape, which by the way is the same money basically. So it really comes down to, do you want the, you know, blocky looks in the smaller size, or do you want, you know, the more conventional SUV looks in the larger size? But the Escape, it is worth noting, at this price point will give you digital gauges. Coming over to the center dashboard here, I'm pretty impressed with just how simple this all is. Aside from the climate control area, which is a little bit of a mess, well, I'll get to that in a second, but as far as the top part here, super simple. I mean, you just have this 8-inch screen, which actually looks kind of tiny in this, you know, area, but it's just a little screen. You have, you know, a couple of buttons here, your volume and tune knob, and it's just really straightforward, and I really like the screen too.
Yeah, and I think sometimes simplicity is key, because you don't want a car that you're like having to figure out where a button is that you want to press or anything like that, and this is so clear and concise and very nice and easy to use.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, the Sync 3 screen, unfortunately it doesn't have the new Sync 4 system, so this does not have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You still have to plug it in, which is kind of weird. I don't know why 2021 Fords across the board don't just have the newest software. So maybe that's a 2022 thing for the Bronco Sport. Maybe that's worth waiting for next year. But this system still works fine, and if you don't use CarPlay all the time, plugging it in isn't a big deal. Everything worked pretty good. It's not the fastest system out there. There are sometimes you have to wait a beat or two to go to the screen that you selected and things, but it always works pretty well, and you know, pretty nice graphics and everything. So, you know, no complaints there. It's not the coolest thing out there, but it, you know, it works totally fine. Also, another thing with this screen here is that it has this B&O stereo, and so this is an optional upgrade you get here, and it's actually optional even on an Outer Banks. Outer Banks doesn't come with it, but then you option on the Outer Banks package onto an Outer Banks. It's confusing the way they have the naming system, but so with that package, that gives you the B&O Play stereo, which is 10 speakers. It's a nice upgrade. They didn't list the actual wattage for it, but it's, you know, a pretty nice sounding stereo, honestly. I've been just listening to Bluetooth audio streaming here during the week, and it sounded actually very good. I'm pretty impressed. These B&O systems are kind of hit or miss. This one is pretty good. I was pretty happy with it. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be amazing, and I think if you're looking for the best stereo in this segment, Mazda and the CX-30, hands down, is way better than this system. But this is towards the top of the pack, in my opinion. It sounds really nice, and that package, in addition to the B&O Play stereo, It does also give you this huge moonroof. This moonroof is pretty big. It's not your typical like small cutout moonroofs like you see in like the Subaru Crosstrek. You can get a moonroof in those. It's like half the size of this one. This is really massive. It would be awesome if they offered a panoramic roof or something. You can't get anything like that here. But yeah, it's a really large piece of glass. And aside from the Jeep Renegade, which does have like removable roof panels and a huge glass thing, aside from that, this is probably the biggest moonroof in its segment, which also kind of gives you more of an airy feel and kind of helps you to take in the outdoors a little bit more. Right beneath that, you also do have this really large bin, which is kind of unique in this segment to have a bin so high up here like this. And it's nicely rubberized. You can fit, you know, a bunch of stuff in there. And then coming down beneath that, you have your climate controls, which, like I mentioned, are a little bit of a mess just because there are so many buttons, and they're really small little buttons as well. And it just doesn't make any sense from a button placement standpoint in some areas. I mean, I like, you know, some of the good things are you have these rubberized knobs, which are kind of cool. And, you know, everything feels like it's screwed together pretty well for this segment. So I don't have any complaints with that. But then you have all these little buttons for the different climate functions. And then, like, for example, the heated steering wheel button is over on the passenger side instead of being closer on the driver's side here, where there's a blank button, like ready and waiting. Like, why put it there instead of there? Like, I'm talking about an inch difference. So this is really nitpicky stuff. But just like head scratcher things, I'm like, why would you put the driver's steering wheel heat button on the passenger side of this cluster here? It just, you know, little things like that. Again, I'm nitpicking, not a big deal. But just, you know, I wish that this was as simple as it is up here, because I think this is fantastic with the screen and all that. You do also have more of that rubberized texture here on your shifter control here, and just a little rotary knob, so that's kind of nice and maximizes your space in this area, so you don't have a big blocky shifter to worry about. And you also have another little knob here for those GOAT modes, which, by the way, stands for Go Over Any Terrain. That's what the acronym is there for GOAT modes. But so nice to have those. You will also, if you go for that Badlands trim with a more advanced four-wheel drive system, you'll find a more advanced four-wheel drive selector down here, which will give you a four-wheel drive low and all that, so that'll change a little bit with those. As far as storage spaces here in the Bronco Sport, they did a pretty good job to, you know, typical small crossover fashion. So in the doors here, you have a, you know, smaller pocket, but it does have, you know, a bottle holder, which is nice to have there.
It's not a very deep pocket though.
Yeah, that's true. It is pretty shallow. I'm kind of worried that it actually wouldn't hold a bottle in there super well when you're going around a corner or something. Yeah. It would just spill right out. So make sure your bottles are nicely sealed up, just in case that doesn't hold your bottle size in there super well. And then coming over to the center, like I said, you have that bin up top, and then beneath the climate controls you have, in this one, the wireless charging pad. It's a pretty narrow wireless charging pad though. That's another thing I could say. It's not very well future-proofed. My iPhone 11 Pro will fit in here, but if you had like a Max version of those phones, it'd probably be a pretty tight squeeze. And if you have, you know, one of the even larger Android phones or something, you might not actually be able to fit it in that wireless charging area.
Yeah, and it's also diagonally situated. It's not front and back. It's kind of strange.
Yeah, it is strange, because if they did just spin that, you know, 90 degrees and have it side to side there, then you could have that whole thing be the wireless charging pad and have a huge amount of space there. Or they could have put the wireless charging pad up here beneath the screen. That's even a larger space than what you have here. We'll see if they change that, you know, in a little refresh maybe down the road. But as of right now, just keep in mind, as long as your phone isn't enormous, it should fit in there okay. Coming back, you also have two cup holders and this little like mini circular thing in the middle there, which could, you know, hold some kind of other mount or something. It's kind of a cool little touch.
Yeah, it holds like a Red Bull or something, kind of that size.
Yeah, so that's all, you know, nice to have that. And then you have the center armrest, which again has more of this navy blue leather, which I really love, especially with the silver stitching. Looks great. And it has some padding to it. There is like hard plastic beneath the padding, so, you know, if you really have your elbow on here for hours on end, it might not be super comfortable, but should be pretty good, you know, most of the time. And you open that up and you'll see a pretty large bin there, which has a little pen holder and also another USB jack and another USB-C jack, and a good size there, so good amount of space there.
Also, there are some pockets right in the front seats here, which is kind of nice. I don't know if you have like some maps or something, if you're doing some like old school road tripping, you can throw them in there. Moving on to the back seat here in the Bronco Sport, before we get to all the storage spaces, first off, the space as far as for humans goes. So I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself, I have maybe 2 inches of legroom to spare, maybe 2.5.
But that's about it. It is pretty tight. It's basically like any other subcompact crossover in this segment, you know, like a Mazda CX-30, something like that, where, you know, if your driver is over 6 feet tall, you know, that back seat will be borderline useless. I mean, it's going to be tight, and so you're definitely going to want to sit in one of these at the dealership and make sure that it will fit and has enough space for your lifestyle. Because like I said, it looks a little bit bigger on the outside, and you get on the inside and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty cramped for the back seat. So you'll definitely want to try that on for size. It is a comfortable back seat though, and of course you have plenty of headroom thanks to this boxy shape. So if you have a long torso, you'll be totally fine. It's just people with long legs, you know, might have a little bit of an issue there. There's dedicated air vents back there, which is very nice that they have those, as well as a regular house current plug in there. But strangely, there aren't any USB jacks in the back seat, which is something you typically do get in this segment of vehicle, especially in these upper, you know, $30,000 vehicles in this segment. You do usually get something there. You don't have anything aside from just that one plug, which again, you could convert into a USB jack, you know, with a little, you know, $5 plug, you know, thing or something, but still kind of a strange omission there. You also do have a fold down center armrest with 2 cup holders built into it, which is nice, and there's also pockets there in those doors as well. And so another cool little extra touch is that you'll see on the seat backs of these seats, there's a zipper there, and so it kind of opens up like a backpack, and it's kind of cool. You can slide, you know, like an iPad or something in there and hide that kind of stuff out of sight. So that's a nice little bonus space. You also see there's, I believe they're called Molly clips here on the back, and so those you can, you know, attach carabiners and things like that and hang like bottles and things off of this seat back. There's also, they've been advertising that there is an under seat storage bin. You can open up basically the seat bottom back there and have a bin. This one doesn't have it. I tried yanking on that seat every possible way and I could not find a way to open that up. So I don't think the Outer Banks version has it, or this one just doesn't have it for whatever reason, but that is something that they do offer on these, and just, I guess, some other trims, maybe the Badlands gets that or something. But yeah, so overall, you know, a nice back seat, and, you know, I just, again, wish it was a little bit bigger. Even just another inch or two would have really gone a long way. And, you know, even like the Ford Escape even has a sliding bench for that second row, so you can have more or less space if you want. I really wish they would have offered that kind of same functionality here in this, so that, you know, if you don't need the back seat space and you want to have a ton of cargo space, you could slide it forwards or backwards. But with this seat bottom, it's fixed, and so you're just stuck with what you got right there. And then moving on to the cargo space here in the Bronco Sport, that is one of the areas where this is one of the best in its segment as far as subcompact crossovers goes. Aside from the Jeep Renegade, you know, it's really the only one that really is going to offer the same square shape as this. Everything else has more of a slope to the rear hatch, and that kind of cuts into, you know, your amount of versatility. But even beyond what the Renegade offers, this is a little more functional, because in addition to just it being a nice square shape back there, you also do have the hatch that opens up, but then there's also the rear glass that opens up separately, which is something you don't get in the Renegade or any other vehicle in this segment. And that's a really cool little touch, depending on your lifestyle, again, and how you plan to use that. You know, Ford has shown you can have surfboards sticking out of the back there, and, you know, those types of things. You know, it gives you a little bit of extra functionality with that extra flexibility, and so great to have that. I also love the little Easter egg. They have a little vintage Bronco printed out there on the rear glass, and so that's cool. As far as that cargo area goes, it's you know, very large. If you open it up, you do see a spare tire there under the floor, but you don't really have any extra spaces or bins underneath there or anything like that. And also, that cargo floor can actually turn into a table. You can actually have an optional version of that slides out, and you can have it as an actual table. And also a few other little things as far as tailgating features go with that hatch is that there's actual lights in the hatch itself. So whenever the hatch is raised up, you can have lighting that like lights down onto you. And there's also a bottle opener built into the actual hatch latch area. So you have a built-in bottle opener ready to go. If you open up that hatch, you can, you know, open your beverages there. That's a cool little touch. There's also an optional 400-watt inverter you can get in these, so that you can power some higher voltage electronics in the back of this, which is something you also don't get in most of the competitors there. And so that's a really cool little touch as well, to give you some extra versatility when you're out, you know, in the middle of nowhere and want to plug something in. It's great you have that function there. And so yeah, I mean, it's a good amount of space. Like I said, better than most crossovers in the segment. And so if you're looking at subcompact stuff and you want to have the most cargo space possible, this is probably going to be your best bet as far as that goes. that. But yes, that's about all of our thoughts here on the interior of the Bronco Sport. Overall, it's, pretty simple and straightforward here on the interior. It's rugged. It fits. I don't think, I wish it was a little bit more luxurious for the price tag. Again, $36,000. You could go buy a Mazda CX-30 or even a CX-5 and have a way more luxurious interior for the same money. But clearly, if you're buying a Bronco Sport, you're probably not too concerned about that, and you're more into the whole rugged vibe of this vehicle. And so this is going to be a durable interior with the plastics and stuff, and I don't think you'll have any complaints. I think it's, it still is, nice enough for its price tag that it doesn't feel super cheap in here or anything. And especially, again, these seats, I can't say it enough, they really elevate this, I think, a good bit.
Yeah, I just think they're so cool, especially the color and stuff. You really can't get, like, blue leather anywhere other than a high-end luxury brand.
Yeah, so it's so cool they offer that. Kudos to Ford. Keep offering fun colors and exciting stuff, and don't be afraid to deviate from the norm, and hopefully other car companies follow along. But yeah, that's all of our thoughts. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing us here with the Bronco Sport to review for you guys today. Definitely go check out the driving review as well that I'll be posting if you want to hear how this vehicle drives and more thoughts on fuel economy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Take care.